Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Sangrutan, and we are back for another episode of Spice for Thought. This is episode 16, and it will be dedicated to the Imperium Cards. This is part 2 of this series. And as you probably saw in part 1 already, we go through every single card of the Imperium row, discuss the potential strategies, their upsides, downsides, strength, and so on and so on. And we then end the episode by trying to place them on the map, on that matrix that I kind of developed. And this will basically be the follow on of the first episode. So if you haven't seen already part 1 of this series, go check then episode 15 of Spice for Thought, the previous one. And I hope you enjoy this. If you see anything I might have missed or anything you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed that. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch. Hope to see you very soon, maybe as well on one of my live streams. And without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So let's dive in those three clusters. We have Show of Strength first. This card comes from Immortality, as usual, with those three little dots. Has no agent icons unless you have more deployed troops than each opponent. Then it would have green and yellow. This is not a fantastic condition because it's quite hard to actually guarantee yourselves more deployed troops than anyone else, unless maybe you combo that with the Weirding Ways. That's the name of the card I'm looking for. Obviously, in that case, you could, if you're playing first, deploy with Weirding Ways and play right away with Show of Strength right after, guaranteeing yourself having more deployed troops. Other than that, you usually expect to play it with a Graft card because this part of the effect would work regardless. Drawing two cards is very strong, but having to graft that with another card or having more deployed troops is quite complicated condition to fulfill to be able to draw those two cards. Other than that, if you cannot, it's basically a starter card infantry in your hand, revealing just for one persuasion and two swords. Corrupt Smugglers, also from Immortality. If grafted, you gain 2 spice. It is a Spacing Guild card, as well as Fremen, but the Spacing Guild part is more important because that's the one that combos with maybe other cards like Interstellar Conspiracy. So it has a niche use for it, but it is not so strong because, again, if you don't graft it, you don't get so much value out of it. At least it has agent icons, but other than that, it doesn't do so much for you if not grafted. Spiritual Fervor. This one, again, an Immortality card, costs 3 and allows you to get 1 research action right away. After that, it is a bit dead in your deck. It reveals for 1 specimen, which can still be useful, but the rest, it is basically a Dune, the desert planet, so not so great of a card once you bought it, but that experimentation on purchase, that can be quite useful. Desert Ambush. Desert Ambush, for each troop you deploy, you may force an enemy unit to retreat. So a Rise of X card, really strong in the sense that this effect, if you can deploy a lot, you can make dreadnoughts and troops retreat afterwards. The problem is you can only deploy from a desert space with that card, meaning you can deploy 2 units at best. Or actually, you need to deploy troops to make units retreat. So this can be quite strong if you manage to graft it to something else, to maybe go in a city space, then it becomes a bit more interesting. To graft it maybe with a phase dancer or something that allows you to go hardy warriors, then it becomes more and more strong. And the strongest, obviously, most pleasant way of playing it is actually if you can play it on Highliner using maybe a dispatch and envoy intrigue. Then obviously this becomes disgusting because you can deploy 7 troops and make your opponent's retreat a total of 7 units across them. So you choose, you make your picks. You can basically wipe most of them out of the combat and guarantee yourself a nice little win there. Where it can also be pretty strong is with troop transports as a tech. If you go shipping with that Desert Ambush, you can deploy 3 troops from the shipping track thanks to your tech. In that case, you can also retreat 3 units from your opponent. So it has a ceiling that is quite interesting, but quite a niche use, to be honest. So it's complicated to pull off in a nice little way. Then we have what I consider the strongest 3-coster and probably one of the weakest 3-coster here, the Laxus Surgeon, card from Immortality. Allows you to play it to wealth, to an Emperor space, Wealth Conspire, or to a city space, converting 2 of your specimens into 2 beetles. This is insane. Knowing that usually with reclaimed forces, you would pay 3 specimen to get 1 beetle. This is an exchange rate that you would like to get your hands on. This basically guarantees you almost the end Tilax VP, so the second victory point. But what's even worse is once you're done with that Tilax VP, obviously you don't really want to play that card anymore. No worries, it still reveals for 2 persuasion. You could even, if you need to, lose 2 troops to get 2 specimen. This is less used, but can still find its use at some point. Let's say you're just missing 1 beetle, so you don't necessarily want to play it, especially because it's also 2 persuasion, so you might reveal it for Spice Must Flow. But if you're missing 1 beetle, you'd still want to get that beetle. Let's say you still have already 1 specimen in your reveal. So this is another 2 specimen. You get those 2 additional ones. You reclaim for that missing beetle. You still get the 2 persuasion. So it can get its use from that as well. Very high floor, very high ceiling as well, in my opinion. Definitely an S tier card. Imperial Shock Trooper. This one has no agent icons, so that puts it already in a very low floor, in my opinion. Quite low ceiling as well, because it does reveal for swords, so for your Imperial Basha or artillery play, it could be nice. Other than that, it's not so great. And I mean, in the end, if you send an agent to an Emperor space, yes, it reveals for 5 swords, but it's quite niche. So yeah, not very good card in my opinion. We have Trueseer. Trueseer from Rise of X is the cornerstone of those unload effects, and happy coincidence we have one right next to Trueseer so that we can illustrate the fact. But you can basically go to, let's say, selective. That's the best use you can usually have, especially if you have, let's say, in the shadows in your hand as well. You go selective, you flip in the shadows away. That's 1 BG influence on top of your selective, so that's already 2. You draw a card from it, because why not? That helps you flip through your deck as well. And then you can basically trash with the selective play you did the card you just discarded. So very strong. Even if you don't do that kind of play, you can always send it to Wealth, to Secrets, to Menta, to High Council and whatnot, and still flip a card, ideally one that has an unload effect. If not, it's still a way to cycle through your deck a bit quicker. Very strong card. Not a very high ceiling, but a very, very high floor, in my opinion. X-Guild Compact. X-Guild Compact allows you to discard 2 cards to get Dreadnought. So this is actually a strong effect. You lose a lot of your reveal. Unless, again, you have in the shadows, Freighter Fleet, other cards that you want to discard, then it's a win-win. If not, it's obviously a cost. But if you don't see a strong reveal action for you anyways, strong card you want to buy, just why not discarding them and gain a Dreadnought out of your move to Fall Space or to Highliner. Very strong. Especially because Dreadnought is not such a strong space to visit. So if you can get a Dreadnought without visiting Dreadnought, it can be quite powerful. The other, the unload effect allows you to get Tech Negotiator, which is quite strong because maybe you can get an expensive tech for cheap thanks to this. Especially if, let's say, you combo it with Trueseer, you flip it, you trash it because you went selective. That's 4 Negotiator. So that's basically a true Chomer key for free. Holtzman engine, which costs 6 at first, just for 2, or even 1 if you go to Tech Nego, and so on and so on. So not a bad card per se. Thumper and Jessica of Arrakis. If you don't know those cards, it's normal. Those are promo cards, so they're not in the digital game, but let's still cover them quickly. Here, this allows you to double the bonus spice you harvest with this agent, so not the base spice, but the bonus. Not very strong in my opinion. Quite a low floor. It can have a bit of a ceiling, because if you get enough bonus spice to maybe warrant yourself a Highlander afterwards, this can be valuable. If not, so. And then we have Jessica of Arrakis, also just yellow space. So if you have another Bene Gesserit card in play, you draw 2 cards, which can be strong, but Bene Gesserit combos are a bit demanding. You need another Bene Gesserit in play when you play it. So this is not so easy. Plus, it only has yellow access. So this is not so strong in my opinion, especially when you play with Immortality. You don't like yellow cards only because you want to play your experimentations more often than not in those spots. So it's a bit cannibalizing your plays potentially, but still can have a high ceiling thanks to those double draws. Then we have Weirding Way. Weirding Way is that card we talked about with the voice. It is a good counter against the voice because you may take another turn immediately after this one if you want to. So this has a bit of a similar use to the voice as well, because you could go to grab some water, then immediately after this agent play a research station, or grab some spice, go Highlander, or go shipping. Basically the same uses, go shipping, then go immediately afterward Swordmaster, and so on and so on. So similar uses to what the voice can do. I prefer the voice because the voice can also be revealed for 2 persuasion, but it is not too far away from it. Local Fence allows you to do some trading if you feel like it. 2 spice into 6 Solari if you're Yuna, or 5 Solari for anyone else. 5 Solari into 4 spice. So this can add you some flexibility. Reveals for 2 persuasion as well, so the floor is not too bad. The only draw back to this card I feel like is the fact it only goes to city spaces. But it's not a bad card. Shifting Allegiances, this is absolute S tier. Not only does it reveal for 2 persuasion, it also gives you so much flexibility with your influence there as well. You can get some good combos going, for instance, dropping somewhere and going for the Emperor Alliance when you're on a desert space, so that you can deploy those additional Emperor bonus troops directly in the combat. This is quite strong. Otherwise, I mean, you can go for, let's say, Haga Basins, spend 1 spice, 1 water, get some spice, and maybe drop down somewhere to drop up for the Fremen Alliance to get that water back, getting it basically for free. But what is very strong with it is, yes, it costs you 2 spice, that's expensive. Yes, net, you only gain 1 influence, because you need to drop 1 to gain 2. But it has such an explosive potential, because you can steal an alliance with it potentially. And the other thing is, you can also fight for an alliance, and if you lose that fight, no big deal. This is typically influence you can drop back down for free, basically, with shifting. So it is a good card, very flexible plays you can allow yourself to make, and it still reveals for 2 persuasion, so very, very high floor and very high ceiling as well, absolute S tier. Organ Merchants, I'm not a huge fan of that card. Immortality card that allows you to spend a specimen for 4 Solari, so the use case I can see for that is very early in the game to get your Swordmaster, yes. After that, not so much. Reveals for 1 Solari, so it's not the worst, but wouldn't buy that more often than not. Space Travel draws you a card, has 2 persuasion, only visits Spacing Guild though, so it's good for Highlander late in the game. Also replaces itself thanks to a draw, has 2 persuasion, so reveals quite nicely. So the floor is not too bad. The ceiling is Highlander in my opinion, so not bad. It's also actually a Spacing Guild card, so you could combo it typically with that Interstellar Conspiracy card that grafts, and if you graft it with a Spacing Guild, it gives you another bump. So there you could find some synergies, but it's a good card. Solid base, not absolutely amazing. Plant Coupling, this is very, very good. Very strong card because you can graft it to any Bene Gesserit card that has the, if you have a Bene Gesserit card in play, and make that effect work, because this card is a Bene Gesserit and it will be in play if you graft it to the other one. Plus, Usually with Graft, the problem is you spend 2 cards on 1 agent turn. What is good here is you draw a card anyways. So it kind of replaces itself. Very, very strong. I really like it, and you want to play it and buy it more often than not. So yeah, very good. Test of Humanity, very good card. Reveals for 2 persuasion in case you don't want to play it, but it is a very fun card to play. Very unique effect, because you leave your opponents a choice between either discarding a card or losing a deployed troop, not one from the garrison, one from the combat. Also has nice accesses, Bene Gesserit to go get your influence there, to go Menta maybe, to go City and so on. And one play I really like with that is if you can go Menta earlier in the round and you're basically last to reveal, if everyone already revealed and you still have 1 agent to play, you force everyone to lose a deployed troop because they cannot discard a card anymore. Even if it's just 1 player, if it's the player you target that you don't want to see in the combat, then you can make it happen by going City with your last agent. If they already revealed, they lose a deployed troop. Very strong. Sayadina requires a lot of water, but gives you a unique path to a victory point, which is very good. Also allows you to go visit some important spaces in Fremen and Bene Gesserit factions. Has both tags as well for synergies, and reveals for 0 unless you have a Fremen bond, in which case it reveals for an insanely good 3 persuasion. A lot of the time we think, yeah, that's alright, but it is a huge gap to have 2 or 3 persuasion, and trust me, this helps a lot to get Spicemas flows. Similarly to 1 persuasion not so good, 2 persuasion very stable good, 3 persuasion amazing. This gap does not feel like amazing, trust me, it is. It is very important and very good to have this kind of high persuasion cards. So Sayadina, very high ceiling because it gives you that VP potential, very high floor as well because it gives you some nice accesses on the side as well. Guild Bankers, absolutely broken card from the base game. The Spicemas flow costs 3 less to acquire this turn. This can be very strong because it allows you to get Spicemas flows on the cheap, and where it's even stronger is if you can combo that with a Fremen deck that has Liet kinds, because I have in the past seen 3 Spicemas flows being bought at once in 1 reveal turn, and this is not so complicated to make happen if you have both Guild Bankers and Liet kinds. You basically just need to draw a lot, and it's not so crazy even, but yeah, absolute high floor because it allows you to get Spicemas flows. And if you don't, well, no big deal, you can still use it to farm some influence on Emperor or Spacing Guild for basically 0 persuasion. If you don't plan on buying a Spicemas flow, you buy it, you play it, 0 persuasion attached to it, so you can still buy that good card you might see in the Imperium row. Fedaykin Death Commando, also from the base game, has a Fremen bond for 3 swords, which is not too bad if you can make it work, but more often than not, you will want to play it probably on a city to trash something from your discard or from your cards in play. Trash those daggers, those recon. It's a high floor, low ceiling, but high floor, because if you can just trash Reconnaissance with it, you basically replace Recon with Fedaykin Death Commando in your deck effectively, making it a much better card. So it's quite a low risk to buy potentially. Obviously, it's still an opportunity cost because you can maybe trash Recon with other tools, maybe selective and so on, and not replace it with something you might not find much use for. So it's not like a free launch to buy Fedaykin Death Commando and trash Recon, but in some setups, in some Fremen decks, can be very good. In Manipulation, however, is, in my opinion, a better card to get more often than not if you're not on a Fremen setup, because it also allows you to trash, gives you a potential additional bonus there if you have already a Bene Gesserit card in play. 2 spices, non-neglectable, but where it makes it a better card in my opinion is it reveals for 2 persuasion, which obviously allows you and gives you that flexibility in choosing whether you have something to trash, to play, fair enough, go for it. If not, reveals for 2, very good. Wrist Knife, also from base game. Has Fremen access, gives you a 1-star RE when playing it, so that's pretty good as well. Can be useful, can help a lot, especially early in the game. And it has that unique ability of potentially revealing for influence if you have a Fremen bond. So this is quite strong. I like it. Has medium high ceiling, rather medium to be honest, but quite a high floor. The only problem is it reveals for 0 persuasion. Obviously that's a bit of a drawback. Overall still a good card though. Now, 2 Bene Gesserits from the base game again. Initiate is basically Paul Atreides ring, has the 3 accesses of the ring, allows you to draw a card, which is Paul Atreides' signet ring ability, so that's basically it. It is a better card than his ring though, because it's also a Bene Gesserit, so it can combo with all the Bene Gesserit cards we were talking about before, allows you to also draw, so this on Menta, on Arrakeen, gives you 2 draws, this on deck negotiation, gives you the persuasion that it loses, that you lose by playing it, plus a draw. So this card should help you maybe get stronger cards in your deck as well. Low ceiling, but reasonably high floor. Bene Gesserit Sister, I really like the access there. Helps you get some much needed faction influence, but what makes it a really good card, or very high floor at least, is that that reveal flexibility. You can go for the 2 persuasion, more often than not that's what you will do, and makes it again a high floor card. But if you don't need that persuasion, or if you need swords more, you can opt for 2 swords, and this obviously can be very strong. So I like that flexibility on the reveal. I like the Bene Gesserit faction access as well in case, so a very versatile card overall. Again, not a very high ceiling, but pretty high floor. So there we go, now placing the 3 costers on that matrix where we already have the 1 and 2 costers. Obviously, if you haven't seen that video, I strongly encourage to have a watch to understand why and where we placed all those lower cost cards. Anyways, let's now start then with Show of Strength. I think the ceiling is not too bad, but the floor is very low given it has no agent icons per se. It needs some specific conditions, not so easy to be able to play it. So I think I would put it here, because 2 draws is still powerful if you can make that happen. So quite a strong ceiling, but very low floor, lowest you can basically get. Corrupt Smuggler, the if grafted part means the floor is a bit low, and to be honest the ceiling, I mean, yes, it has Highlander access, so this is not too bad and can help. But on its own, it probably would then come here, I guess, somewhere. Yeah, maybe a bit lower though, and I would then also lower our guild administrator here a bit, because they kind of need to be on the same level in terms of ceiling, if we consider the ceiling here being the fact that it brings you to Highliner. Being if you have the spice for that, obviously. But otherwise, in a base case, how often is it useful in terms of floor, basically? It's not going to happen that often, because you probably won't get the if grafted parts so often, and 2 spice for that is nice, but it's not outstanding. Spiritual Fervor, so this one can have some use cases where it's powerful, but it's still not very high ceiling. It's just, it can give you that last remaining, let's say, beetle or influence bump, whatever. So in some edge cases it can be very strong, so I wouldn't put it in absolutely low ceiling, maybe still somewhere here, basically a bit on the edge. In terms of floor, it's not so bad because it does give you the bump. The problem is it stays in your deck afterwards. That's something I'm not a huge fan of, obviously. It's a card a bit dead. Once you bought it, it's fine, but then you want to kind of trash it. So maybe it's a bit hard to place it. Maybe in the floor I would put it higher than those cards. because of that research action it gives you. But the ceiling is also not so strong. Actually, I mean, it could be a VP at some point, so it's still not to be discarded. I'll put it here, I guess. Because obviously, some cases that research action allows you to maybe reach that first genetic markers, from where on you can then buy the Laxu cards and put them top of your deck. So that's also what makes maybe its floor a bit better, is that research actions are systematically good to have. Desert Ambush is definitely in that quadrant here, high ceiling, low floor, for sure. And I think it has a higher ceiling than anything we've seen so far, because it could be typically a highliner and retreating 7 of your opponent's units. The floor, well, it's still maybe around here, because in the end it still allows you to systematically retreat 2 of your opponent's troops, and if you send out 2 troops, retreat 2 troops of your biggest opponent, let's put it that way. That's a difference of 8 strength in the combat, so it's still not so bad, actually. So maybe I'll put it somewhere here. Tilak Surgeon definitely up there. In terms of ceiling, I think it's... Is it higher than in the Shadows in terms of ceiling? Because in the Shadows, played right, or luckily, could mean another alliance. This, on one hand though, it allows you to focus other things on the research track as well. If you can dodge those beetles, but because you get them all with Tilak Surgeon, then maybe not so bad either. The floor is very high though, so it would come somewhere here as well. Maybe even a bit of a higher floor than in the Shadows given the persuasion, but maybe a bit of a lower ceiling. I think I'll put them like that. Yeah, let's do that. Imperial Shock Trooper. This again has no icons and pretty low ceiling. The only play where it could work in terms of ceiling is with artillery or Imperial Basha as well, I think. Although it has more swords on reveal, especially if you went to an Emperor's place. So maybe I'll put it somewhere here. Yeah, let's put it here. Truesayer, higher floor for sure. Healing is also not too bad because it allows some mean plays, especially with cards like Freighter Fleet. I think it's going somewhere here. Slightly higher ceiling than in the Shadows, I'm not sure. Maybe not. Somewhere here. X-Guild Compact. Still a pretty low floor because it's 0 persuasion. But getting those dreadnoughts, potentially if you have some nice cards to discard, doesn't cost you much to get that. It could have a high floor, to be high ceiling. In my opinion, it goes somewhere here. I mean, I've never really played that card, but doubling the bonus spice, yeah, ceiling is better than floor for sure. I would put it somewhere here. It only has yellow access, so it's also not outstanding. And maybe somewhere here. Slightly better floor than blank slate typically. Not much better, yeah. Jessica of Arrakis, again double draw. Actually, it makes it very similar to Show of Strength, except it has one less icon. But it would go somewhere here, I guess. The Bene Gesserit is probably easier to trigger than the grafting, because you could draw it off of a Bene Gesserit, this card, whereas grafting, you need the grafting at the same time in the hand as your Show of Strength. So somewhere here, I guess. I mean, let's still put them separately. Weirding Ways has a similar ceiling than the Voice, but I would put it somewhere here. Lower floor because of that reveal. Then we have local fence, pretty low ceiling for sure, but it's not so bad of a card. It could still allow you to convert resources into something you need for maybe a victory point. Maybe the ceiling is not... I mean, to be honest, liaison should go down in terms of ceiling. There we go. Probably go somewhere here. Actually, it should go pretty much to the same level as liaison for the floor, because it's also 2 persuasion. Just no green access, but other than that, it's a bit better. I'll put it somewhere here, I guess. Shifting allegiances definitely goes up there as well. It costs 2 spice to play, so the ceiling might be a bit higher than in the shadows. How about the floor? Actually, a good question. I mean, don't take my rankings to the millimeter. Like here, they're basically all pretty much in the same zone. I'm not gonna say 100% in the shadows or Tilak Surgeon have a higher floor. It's also a very like subjective way of ranking them. So I'll just put them there. What is close to each other is close to each other, and that is what it is. I don't think I can rank them to the millimeter there. Organ Merchant. Ceiling is pretty high, although it can help you to get maybe your Swordmaster, so maybe still put it somewhere here. Ceiling is pretty low, sorry, is what I meant. But for the Swordmaster, might still not be so bad. For the floor, I mean, it has city and desert access. It gives you a Solarian reveal. Maybe somewhere here. Yeah, let's do that. Space travel has a pretty high floor given the 2 persuasion, but I think more often than not, I might even just prefer liaison for the accesses, because guild is really, if you get eyeliner, then happy days, but you get a draw out of it, so maybe it still goes pretty close here, a bit of a higher ceiling. There we go. Blunt coupling definitely goes up there somewhere. It is a good card, definitely. Probably somewhere here. The ceiling higher because of those Bene Gesserit synergies you might be able to do. And the grafting, meaning you could play another card with it that should not be able to go Bene Gesserit, and yet it goes thanks to the graft. Test of Humanity is also in that region, to be honest. Whether it's Truesayer or Test of Humanity is a bit game dependent. Both could be played. I think I'll just put them like that. Ceiling is actually maybe a bit higher thanks to the fact the use case we were talking about before. If you can make your opponents lose a troop without a choice because they're already revealed, that's not too bad, but I still think the other 2 Bene Gesserits are a bit better in terms of ceiling. But in terms of floor, I think debatable. Yeah, Gina probably has a bit of a lower floor if you don't have any Fremen. But it's still definitely in that quadrant as well. Higher ceiling for sure. Has a strong ceiling. Should be somewhere there, I think. This could go higher. That doesn't really matter. As I said, it's not to the millimeter. But yeah, lower floor is still not too bad, but definitely a high ceiling there. Guild bankers typically also come somewhere there. In terms of ceiling, it could be really mean if you get it comboed with Liet Kahns. Typically it goes up there definitely, and it has a high floor. Maybe a bit of a lower floor though if you don't have a high persuasion deck. Maybe somewhere here. The Daikin Death Commando is a pretty good card, but pretty stable. I think a higher floor than... I would probably put it somewhere here. Gene manipulation, higher floor for sure. I think higher floor than Fredo Fleet, but maybe lower ceiling. This is a pretty safe card, to be honest, so probably come somewhere here. The trashing, though, could be helpful. Yeah, it's a pretty safe card, so let's put it maybe a bit lower, though. Yeah, somewhere here, I guess. Yeah. Wrist knife. Wrist knife would be a pretty low floor because of the 0 persuasion, but the ceiling is pretty high thanks to that potential reveal. Fremen influence, that can be pretty mean. I think I'll put it somewhere here. Then initiate, low ceiling for sure, but can have its use. Has only 1 persuasion, so that puts her maybe a bit below here. I think somewhere here. The sister has, I think, a higher floor by default for the reveal, for the versatility on the reveal. And maybe a slightly higher ceiling. Maybe no, similar, because the fact this one has an agent effect for the trash and the spice is probably pretty equivalent to this sister having Bene Gesserit access. So that's, I guess, how it would be until now. So let me maybe do a quick summary on the quadrants, because I guess it's pretty zoomed out here. So that's what we would see in the gamblish quadrant. This in the niche. This in the safe corner. And this in the S tier corner, although again S tier, maybe here I put this one a bit too harshly though, because I'm looking diagonally. This should be pretty much S tier, I think. So yeah, let's put it here. And I would put Guildbankers in S tier 100%. Maybe the second kit should go a bit lower now. It will be a bit of a iterated process, because the more cards I put on that map, the more I'll put into question some others, obviously, or readjust a bit to make it more consistent. And I think this is pretty good. And yeah, Sayadina, Blunt Coupling, The Voice are also a bit not too far away. Truesayer, Test of Humanity. If we take those diagonals, we get a bit of a better use case as well. Maybe then in that case, if we look at diagonals, Gene Manipulation should be a bit better to exclude local fence from this. Yeah, something like that. Arrakis Liaison should go lower in the ceiling, I guess. This I'm pretty happy with. Maybe Spice Smugglers, I was a bit harsh with it. Maybe it could go there. And here. Yeah, I'm not too unhappy with that. Alright, so that was it for this episode. Let me know in the comments, obviously, where you might have disagreed with me. Be very curious to hear about that. And yeah, stay tuned for the part 3, where we will focus on all the cards with 4 persuasion, and there will then be a part 4 for all the remaining cards from 5 persuasion or more. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss that. Hope to see you very soon again. Have a good one. Bye bye.